Recording. Okay. Good evening. Did you have a great week last week on that big spring break? Go to Vegas or Miami or... That's cruel. It really wasn't much of a spring break, was it? Except you did have a night off class, so that kind of helps. All right. So I am going to share my screen with you, and we got so much to cover tonight, so I'm going to go real quick. I sent you this PowerPoint by email. I don't know if you've received it yet or not. Can you even see that? Let's see. Okay, so this is week 8, March the 12th, and tonight we're going to start. I'm going to introduce you to case study 4. So like if you aren't confused enough, because that's not what we're doing tonight, but we're going to start with case study 4. In case study 4, you are going to talk about my favorite part, and that is the principal's role in special education. And it is by far the one who will put you on the map and the front of the newspaper if you don't know what you're doing. So chapter 7 is a critical chapter. So that's the reason that I'm taking a few of our valuable moments tonight to hit the highlights of that with you, to make sure that you can organize that chapter. You're also going to need an inclusion. There's going to be an inclusion model, an article under case study 4, and you will have 6 questions at the end of that. And then there is a PowerPoint inclusion versus mainstream, and that one can be found in the folder Zoom session 8. So those are all the resources that you're going to need for case study 4. Now, I took chapter 7 because we're not really going to have any time to go over that tonight. So what I tried to do was help divide it up for you. The first section is basically your key terminology having to do with the principal's role. You'll see at the very last bullet, I've tried to identify the page numbers. And if you will study it by knowing that, okay, my terminology is on page 170 to 178, be familiar with these terms, then move to the next section. I think that might make it more manageable for you. Then you've got procedures, special education procedures like the pre-referral interventions, the early intervening, and how to determine eligibility under IDEA. Those will be found on page 178 to 183. Now, what you might do, and I've had groups have a lot of success with this before, is you might want to get together with your Zoom group tonight for a few minutes after this, this class, and divide up these readings, and each of you take a section and then just schedule to read it and share back with each other by, say, Thursday or Friday. That might work for you. But this is the part on procedures. Then there's a whole section from page 183 to 191, and that is just on the IEP and all about IEPs. And then there's a section I just called Other, and that starts on 191 and goes to 196. So that is your chapter 7, and that is the basis of what you're going to be doing in your case study. So like I said, it's up to you, but to make that reading more manageable, you might, if you haven't already done it, you might divide that up. Then your assignments that are going to be due by midnight next Sunday, and earlier if you plan to be out celebrating St. Patrick's Day on Sunday. You're going to have to write your peer review for the SCIP, task 1. You've got to do your case study reflection on tonight, and I would really like to have that as soon after tonight as possible. And I still have a few of you that owe me reflections from the last time. A reflection is to be done by each individual person. And you are also supposed to upload your PowerPoint, even though it's a group project. Each of you needs to get a grade for it. So each of you needs to upload that as well. Then you're going to do your discussion board on 7, which is where you attend an IEP meeting. And it really, if you'll go back to that rubric of discussion board, I'm not looking for, I attended an IEP meeting, it was long and there were 5 people there and these are who they were. I'm looking for the details. I want to know who was there. I want to know who the LEA rep was. I want to know who the classroom teacher representative was, why that person was chosen. I want to know what you were doing there. All about that meeting. When were the invitations sent out? Who responded to the invitation? Were those present at the meeting? Did they have them on the table? Give me the details. And then 7A, interview that's not the chair, it's the co-chair of the school's intervention team. And you're determining there all about eligibility services under 504, and looking for, in that when you're looking for your intervention process. And I want to know particularly, there's another question that says, you know, do you do interventions prior to the 90 days? Do you have some form of interventions in place? I think many of you use M-Class and several other programs, but tell me about that process. And you're to continue your SCIP and begin case study 4. Okay, and this right here, whoops, too bad, sorry. These last 2 bullets, I'll have to correct that. That actually goes up here with 7A. So I'll have to fix that for you. So does anybody have any questions before we dive into our exciting, fabulous, fantastic presentations of case study 1? Okay, I'm going to stop share. We're going to start with, let's see, I didn't write this down on my notes. So Kelly's group is going to go first, and then Frida's group will be next, and then Kara's group will be the third and final fantastic group. I'm going to stop sharing. And I'll ask one more time if you have any questions. Someday I'm going to let y'all teach this class and sit here and look at you looking at me, not saying anything. But anyway, just let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, let's start with Kelly's group.
Okay, it's me,
Dr. Who wants to share the screen?
It's just me and Toya. It's only 2 of us tonight, and other people have included a video.
Okay, great. And do you know how to go down to the bottom and take over?
Yeah, hopefully. Let's see.
I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for you.
Please. Okay. I did this last time, so.
You can do it. It's down across the bottom. There you go.
Oh, okay. Did you just do that, Toya? Did I do that? I don't think I did that. Maybe I did. I don't remember doing that. All right, this is Strikeout Bobby case study 1. What should the principal course of action be? This is Melanie's part.
Hi guys, it's Melanie Shaver. So my part is thinking about what the principal's course of action should be in Strike Out Bobby. So first of all, the principal must notify the family. It's the principal's responsibility to enforce policy and rules set forth in the handbook. The principal needs to sit down and have a discussion with the family in order to discuss the offense and the consequences of the offense and how it's outlined in the handbook. If it were me, I would make sure that I had that signature of both the parent and the child, that they had read and will abide by the expectations in the handbook. As noted in Chapter 6 of the Principal's Quick Reference Guide to School Law, principals are responsible for making and enforcing reasonable rules. If they are needed and they're based in board policy and are specific enough so that both students and their parents understand, then you really don't have an issue with enforcing the consequences of the behavior.
Okay, that was Melanie's part. Oh my gosh. Oh, there we go. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, you guys, this screen is like crazy. Due process is my part. I did know in the case study that Bobby admitted guilt, but he still has the right to state his side of the story according to the Fifth Amendment. There's a standard due process requires that rules or policy be fair and of themselves, or procedure due process requires that policies, rules, and regulations be carried out in a fair manner. And also in response to the order, when we talk about the due process, with the fact that I believe Bobby was on a baseball team, and it's talked about how different courts have held up the idea of taking kids out of extracurricular activities because it's considered a privilege and not a property right. All right, the next part is Kelly's part, and she's not here. I'm gonna play her part.
Hi, I'm Kelly McLean. I'm going to be presenting on ethical paradigms for case study number 1 for our group. This student clearly cheated. He copied outright a paper where he was supposed to be interviewing senior citizens within the community. The school obviously is worried that a big supporter will be disappointed in the decision that's made based on the rules of the handbook states. So ethical paradigms that we're looking at today are individual versus the community, us or them versus self and others, truth versus loyalty, honesty, integrity versus commitment or responsibility, short term versus the long term, immediate need versus future goal, or justice and mercy. So fairness / equality and compassion and empathy. I believe this addresses 2 of those areas, truth and loyalty and justice and mercy. The student clearly broke the rules stated in the handbook. Therefore, the school has no choice but to abide by those rules in the handbook, and the student must face the consequences of cheating, which is a failing grade. With Mr. Michaels being a contributor to the school, it puts the school in a predicament because of the financial commitment. But in order to abide by the rules of the handbook, the school has to take that risk that he may no longer be a financial contributor. Justice versus mercy is also addressed because the school wants to show fairness to all students when making decisions. The student chose to cheat, so equality must be given to that student and to the students who do what they were asked to do and expected to do. If the school doesn't have the consequences in place, then how are they to force any other rules stated in the handbook? So while they're risking the chance of this contributor not contributing anymore, they're risking a greater chance with all students involved, because this could come back on them and parents question any of the rules in the handbook and expect their child to be given a pass. Thanks.
Okay, Natoya, you there?
I am here. And so the part I did was the role of the principal in Bobby's case, which was found in the materials that we already got. So according to the document, the powers and duties of the principal, I chose C and E. So C, it says to improve instruction and community spirit. The principal shall give suggestions to teachers for the improvement of instruction. And so I know one of the concerns was that Bobby was on the baseball team and his uncle supports the baseball team and gives money. And look, if Bobby has to go to summer school, he can't participate. Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry. He can't participate in the baseball tournament in the summer. So the principal could, if he wanted to, talk to the teacher, ask if she would give Bobby a chance to redo the assignment in his own work for maybe a lower score, to improve community spirit if he wanted to look at it that way. So he does have that, reserve that right if he wanted to do that. Whether or not the teacher complies with the suggestion, that will be up to her, but he does have the power to ask her to do that. And then E, to discipline students and assign duties to teachers with regard to discipline. I cannot see the screen, hold on. General well-being and medical care of students. The principal shall have authority to exercise discipline over the pupils of the school under policies adopted by the local board of education. So he does have a duty to discipline Bobby for breaking the rules of the handbook in the school. And the last thing at the bottom, according to the multiple ethical paradigm, under profession, there is, principals should be accountable for student academic and social success. They should model principles of self-awareness, reflective practice, transparency, and ethical behavior. Consider and evaluate the potential moral and legal consequences of decision-making. So if the principal was to allow Bobby to perhaps make the assignment up, or whether he says no, he should be, punished accordingly, then whatever your choice is, you have to consider those consequences. And in this case, I would say it would be more of the potential moral consequence rather than legal. And then lastly, best interest of the students. Rights, responsibility, respect are the keys to decision making that are in the best interest of students. So the principal should consider or ask himself, what would be in the best interest of this student? And personally, I would ask, he should consider, is it more appropriate to make the student pay for the penalty, or is it better to have him have the experience of actually doing the assignment and learning and gaining potentially from actually redoing the assignment? And it's just a side note, it has nothing to do with this, but a assignment that is worth more than 50% of your grade, we need to talk about some grading practices.
Amen here.
All right, that's it for us, Dr. Z.
Sorry, I just got to get down one more note you said. Okay, thank you. Farida, is your group ready?
Yes, I believe Tamara's leading our group tonight.
Okay. Tamara, you gonna take it?
I am sharing my screen now.
All right.
Is everybody able to see my screen?
It's lovely.
Okay. So tonight we're going to be presenting, and we are all present. And I'm Tamara Hall, along with Christy Hamrick and Frida Freeman and Halima McCaskill. And we are going to talk about Willie and his predicament. I'm a little stopped up. I have kind of a head cold that I recently developed. So if you cannot understand what I'm saying, please let me know and I will slow down. So, of course, Willie is entitled to due process, and there are two kinds. Procedural requires that the policies and regulations be carried out in a fair manner. You know, are all students who fail the class, who fail the assignment, are they failed for cheating? So is this a consistent process? And then, of course, there's substantive due process, which requires that policies and rules are fair in and of themselves. So is the rule fair and clear, considering cheating of any kind may require a failing grade by the teacher? The policy is kind of ambiguous because it does say may. And then, of course, the right to due process is a cornerstone of a civil liberty. However, the civil liberty does not extend itself to extracurricular activities. Willie, however, is entitled to a fair process where he and the teacher are allowed to share their positions equally, and their families and his parents should be in attendance. And then, of course, is Willie in violation of substantive or procedural? Because realistically, when the teacher confronted him, no one else was present. She didn't have any solid evidence. He confessed. And without that solid evidence and just a confession, it could be her word against his. And then, of course, the policy says cheating of any kind may require a failing grade by the teacher. So the teacher has a chance to decide whether or not Willie could potentially still pass the test, pass the class, or if he could be given another assignment for lesser credit. The question I had, however, may mean that failing is at the discretion of the teacher or at the discretion of the principal, considering the general statutes in section 115-288 says that the principal is in fact the chief academic officer and has the right to grade and categorize students. And how has the policy been implemented in the past? Has that teacher ever failed another student? And then, of course, arbitrary and capricious. Of course, arbitrary means that it is not logical, meaning that there has not been a historical pattern that follows the policy. And capricious means that it is irrational or a rule that is unfairly applied, discriminatory. So in this case, if the teacher, Jane Barton, normally fails, does she normally fail all students for cheating on singular assignments or just Bobby? Is she trying to prove a point? If that's the case, then it's capricious. The fact that there has been no steady implementation of the policy itself could mean that it's arbitrary in and of itself. And then, of course, one final question is that Jane decides to show up to the meeting with her union representative. Does that automatically mean that Jane knows that something's wrong or that there's going to be some pushback? Because if there is pushback and there hadn't been traditionally a system or rather some kind of collegiality with her and the principal, then this could be a serious issue of just a teacher overly punishing students. And then finally, I wanted to bring up the fact that in a way, this policy is kind of a zero tolerance policy. And it says that one, it can be difficult to enforce if A, the policy is not well written, and this policy is not well written at all. Because one, it states that the student may fail. It doesn't say that there are any other conditions or who makes that final decision. And B, those who administer the policy don't have some interpretation. Even though the principal has some interpretation, the fact that the union rep is present and that the teacher is planning to kind of force his hand shows that there can be a fact that she has considered or the staff has considered this a zero tolerance policy.
Okay, there are 4 paradigms of ethics that need to be considered by a school administrator when they conduct their administrative duties. These are justice, care, critique, and profession. The justice paradigm covers the fairness and equality when making decisions. It requires that you weigh whether it's made based on reasonable suspicion versus probable cause, or if it was made arbitrarily or capriciously. The paradigm of care considers loyalty and trust, concern and connection, and can be measured by evaluating nurture and encouragement versus achievement. The critique paradigm addresses corrupted morals, power, critical theory, and social class. It takes into consideration an incident and the offense type versus the action type. Finally, the paradigm of profession outlines accountability for student academic and social success and requires the principal to consider the potential moral and legal consequences of the decision they make, and emphasizes that all decisions should be made in the best interest of a student. The elements of justice, you can switch to the next slide. The elements of justice that pertain to corporal punishment, Jim Crow, and metal detectors are irrelevant in this case study, but other elements are relevant. The teacher in this case study did operate under a reasonable suspicion after she read the assignment and noticed similarities to a previous work. In order for her to have probable cause, she would have needed to have factual evidence to support her suspicion, which could have been still having the assignment from years ago to compare the two. It did not state that she had the assignment, however, only that she investigated, which seemed to only consist of questioning the student. In regard to justice, as applied to this case study, the principal should research other instances throughout the school of cheating and how students have been punished to ensure fair and equitable application of the school policy on honesty and integrity. The policy stated that as a part of this school's policy to maintain standards of personal honesty, cheating of any kind may require a failing grade by the teacher. While the teacher's action is within the realm of the policy, it does state it may require a failing grade, which leaves room for other disciplinary action to be taken rather than failure. In order to ensure justice for the student, having a follow-up conversation with the teacher to establish that the actions taken against this particular student, while in accordance with the policy, are not being administered in an arbitrary or capricious fashion. This is necessary. For example, have other students failed if they were caught cheating, or is this a decision that she made only with this particular student in mind?
I'm going to talk to you today about the paradigms, loyalty, and care. I came up with several questions as I tried to relate these paradigms to the case study. First, loyalty. What does loyalty looks like for Bobby? We talked about the loyalty towards his work, but what about Bobby's side of the story, and who was there to support him? Does Bobby have any stake in the school, being that he is an athlete and does give his time and dedication to the school's baseball team? Is there loyalty towards the school board members and the supporters of the school? The next slide, I will discuss care. Did Bobby have support? Who was checking in on Bobby to make sure that he was on the right track to complete this assignment? How would this decision affect Bobby's future and life going forward? How will the concerns of the community and the baseball team be addressed? Because there are going to be concerns because of his connections to the community. So Bobby does have a strong relationship with one of the school supporters, and it seemed to be that this is the main issue of the situation. So why is this case study different, and does it have the right to be different due to the situation? Although the policy says that it's up to the principal may need some help in this decision making. Maybe some representation from the teachers, the community, even the student body, to help make this decision, since it's going to have such a dramatic or drastic effect on the school and the community. According to the principal's quick reference guide, punishment should be reasonable and is considered excessive when no consideration is given to the student's age, size, gender, physical condition, or ability to bear the punishment. These are the things that should be considered when, as the principal makes this decision for Bobby.
This is Frida, and I will be discussing the critique and profession ethic as it applies to the case study. There are specific questions Tim needs to see answers to in order to make an appropriate decision regarding Bobby's case. The first of which is who makes the rules and policies and who benefits from them. So in the case study, Bobby explained why he cheated. He obviously has a great need to increase his functional skills, specifically his ability to manage his expectations across his academic experience. So was he provided proper support to accomplish this? And is it fair that one assignment weighs so much that it causes him to fail? Who would benefit from Bobby failing? Definitely not him. He already missed the benefits of the assignment. What benefit would it be for him to miss other opportunities to learn from his actions? Which leads us into a third question. Who has the power to enforce the rules and policies? Initially, Jane, the teacher, has the policy. She could have approached the situation from another angle, using the incident as an opportunity to engage Bobby in a life lesson. And Tim, as the administrator, has the power to consider all Bobby's circumstances and maybe make a decision that will better meet his needs, including his need to learn a moral lesson about cheating. The final question is who will be voiceless? Is Bobby's voice being heard? He needs help increasing his ability to manage his responsibilities. So how will failing him accomplish that? Questions Tim should seek answering to from the profession paradigm includes what does the profession and the community expect? It is the given that teachers and school administrators are expected to enforce rules and support standards set by the district in which they work. Education professionals are also expected to inspire, guide, lead, nurture, understand, teach, and yes, discipline. Although schools are driven by standards and curriculum, much of the teaching occurs without plans or structured text. The school nor the community expects its students to be perfect. However, they do share the expectation for students to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes and grow from those mistakes. They also share the common goal for students to develop critical thinking skills and learn to make better decisions as they grow through life. Which leads to a final question. What is in the best interest of the student? Yes, Bobby should be held accountable for his and have consequences for his dishonesty, but does failing him meet his express needs and teach him alternatives to cheating? Failing Bobby will continue to keep him at a disadvantage. He will not learn to manage his responsibilities and make better decisions. School is the one place designated for students to learn and retain skills needed to make good decisions as they grow through life. Implementing punitive actions on Bobby will rob him of a significant learning opportunity. So overall, the decision is complex. There are numerous influencing factors Tim needs to consider, including the policy not being very explicitly clear. So all things considered, there are no benefits on either side for failing Bobby.
And finally, the big concept that we kind of came away with this as a group is that principals must make unpopular decisions. On one hand, if he upholds the teacher in her decision to fail Bobby, then he'll become unpopular with board members and potentially community members. However, he'll still retain the respect of his staff. The flip side of that is that if he does not necessarily uphold the teacher's decision to make instructional calls in her classroom, as this has been her normal practice, then he may face what we call a staff mutiny. And that could be tricky as the school year goes on. No principal or administrator can lead a school by themselves. Thank you. Are there any questions?
No, I'll just say this is when you wish you were the assistant and not the principal.
Okay, so I think our group is last, right?
But not least.
Right. Let me get going here. Kara is on the road, and I'm with you. I'm not sure if the other ones, I know a lot of people couldn't be here tonight, so we've all recorded. Hey guys, this is Amber Lackey, and I'm answering the question, what should the principal's course of action be? We talked as a team and agreed that the first and most primary step we needed to take was to inform and consult with the director at my school, with the director of secondary education and the superintendents. We would also want to notify the parents, the coach, and the teacher of the incident and the fact that we are investigating it. We as a team would probably want to at some point review the policy for plagiarism, maybe even later on get the school improvement team involved to determine if we are following a certain policy, if it's too rigid, if it's too flexible, just to make sure that we're following the local school board policy. And we'll want to gather details about the assignment, find out exactly how much time the kid had and any details around that, and Bob, how much time is it taking from him in his academics? We know as educators that being an athlete, you are held to a higher standard and you have more pressures. You're expected to keep up the academics and play on a team. So there is a higher standard for our athletes. We would want to also look at Bobby's record, his discipline record, incident record since he'd been at school, to see if this is a repeated occurrence, if this is a first time offense, to see if that may be a factor into considering what type of discipline. And ultimately, the decision should be based on policy and facts. And I think it's very important that the principal focus on the relationship with their staff. I'm getting the sense in reading the scenario that might be a problem anyway. And having the trust of the staff, especially since we're able to base it on policy and facts rather than opinion or judgment, is our best choice. The ethical struggle there is that we as educators know how important sports are to a student and to a family, and we also realize that sometimes there's political pressures, such as financial sponsors and volunteers that work in our school. And I think that it would be very important that the superintendent's office support the principal in their decisions, so that when calls are made, because they very likely will be made, everyone's on the same page and we can present a front of being collected and together on the decision. And future action, we as a team, maybe as a school improvement team, would want to look at our policy for plagiarism or cheating. We have read a little bit about the wiggle room policy, knowing that, yes, we could possibly consider giving Bobby a different assignment so he could make this one up and not have a failing grade. But we need to decide as a team when that's appropriate and when it's not.
Hello, my name is Angie Melton. I'm going to be discussing the issues of due process, both substantive and procedural. Substantive due process and issues involve the state's power to regulate certain activities, while procedural due process issues involve an analysis of the procedure required by the Constitution when the state seeks to deprive people of life, liberty, and property. So as we're looking at this case study, Bobby and his cheating incident, we have to keep in mind the Goss versus Lopez 1975 case, where it states that due process merely requires that students be given oral or written notice of the charges, and if a student denies them, school officials must provide an explanation of the evidence and provide an opportunity for students to present their side of the story. In this case, Bobby admitted to the cheating, which in turn does not warrant him having an opportunity to present their side of the story, and the procedures are clear. One of the things we can take away from this is clear procedures allow for more accurate results and fair consequences. As the principal is debating what to do, more so than being concerned with Michael taking away some of the funds and being part of the Board of Education, is something recently that's come up here in North Carolina, is that the consequence needs to be for the behavior, not for the academics. So in this case, Bobby would be receiving a 0 or fail the assignment. Whereas for us currently, you cannot have a academic consequence for a behavior. So the consequence needs to be for the behavior as well. In this case, an alternate assignment of equal rigor should be provided. The consequence should stay, whether that's Bobby not playing baseball or not being able to attend a school dance or event. Another thing to consider is this Bobby's first offense, and is there something clear about what the procedure is for a first offense? What is the opportunity that the school can take to teach Bobby to take responsibility for his actions while also supporting teachers? And I think the issues of due process in this case need to be clearer, and the principal needs to ensure that all school and district policies are followed without violating the rights of the student.
Hi, I'm April, and I'm answering question number 2, the standards of arbitrary and capricious. With this particular case, the principal's course of action cannot be arbitrary or capricious. Arbitrary means singling out a student, and capricious means imposing more punishment than is allowed by law or board policy. The principal cannot make a decision without reasonable grounds or without adequate consideration of the circumstances. With this particular case, of course, the constitutional rights of the students must be respected, but also the principal has to look at all the circumstances. Yes, there is a school policy that is in place with cheating, and there are very direct consequences for cheating. But he also must consider the long-term effects that this could have on the student. He should consider this is the student's first time with cheating, and even keeping in mind, yes, the parents did sign the handbook, but he also has to take into consideration the school board member that is a family member, and the long-term effects it would have on the tournament in the summer and the scholarships and everybody that would be affected. So again, with the course of action, he can't impose any kind of punishment that is more than what the board policy allows. It seems that as if the cheating policy that they have is school related, and the superintendent gave him the leeway to make a decision as he sees fit. So again, he just has to make sure that he's not singling the student out, being arbitrary, and that the punishment fits the crime. Thanks.
Evening, my name is Karen Brooks, and I'll be presenting to you the 2 ethical paradigms, and the ones that we'll be examining today for me is critique and profession, which both contribute to the school decision making. The first thing that we would like to talk about is the corrupted morals under critique. Morals come from our lived experiences. As a principal, you do want to make the best out of decisions and the right decisions. However, you do not want the decisions to be made that it has such a negative impact on the student and the lesson learned. So the questions that we could be asked: would Bobby still learn his lesson if failure was not the outcome? Could an alternate assignment be given? Were we sure that the cheating policy was clearly enforced? Should there be a sense of advocacy to help Bobby so that he could have learned from his mistakes and possibly be a resource to help others? Corrupt experiences can sometimes equal corrupt morals, and as always, the principal's job is to advocate for students while looking at the long-term effects. Power, privilege, and social class. In this case, the principal may look at what does the school lose if Bobby is punished or not allowed to participate in the baseball over the summer. Although the principal has the power to make the decision to fail him, as well as the support from his teacher, who also believes that he should fail, the social class and status can contribute, of his uncle, can contribute to the decision making, and also make the decision making a little complicated, because you might look at it the pose of what could I lose if I do punish Bobby for his cheating. Human rights. Human rights deals with a deep reflection and questioning of what is best for the student. Will my decision to fail Bobby have a long-term effect on him or his willingness to be successful in baseball? As a principal, it isn't my job, it's my job to advocate for students and support them. Although he did make a mistake, Bobby is also human. And so sometimes our consequences for our actions are already developed from the lesson learned. So should the lesson learned for Bobby be just enough? Or should we go even further? Do we even have to punish Bobby as far as making him go to summer school and missing out on some of the things that he already has planned? Or could the lesson have already been learned? So human rights, questioning what is best for the student. The other part that we would like to talk about is the profession. And in the profession, we have accountability for students. So as a principal, we are held accountable for the student's academic success. What type of student was Bobby? I mean, this obviously is his first offense, but has he learned from making this mistake? Will he be punished for this one mistake? How detrimental will this be to his social success, his academic success, but also helping him increase his social success? Does this have a long-term impact on him? We also talk about our obligation to the student, the school, and the stakeholders. Will our decision that's made have a negative impact on the stakeholders? Should we uphold the policy and be mindful? Am I still mindful of my obligations to the school stakeholders as a rule, and the school policy needs to be upheld and followed? And by the end of the day, my long-term effect is what is best for the student's interest. My decision should always be based on, is this best for what the students need, or is this in the best interest of the students?
Hi, I'm Heather Ferguson, and I have ethical paradigms to talk about tonight. As educators, when we look at ethics, we ask ourselves, what is happening and why is this happening? We're looking at the character and the conduct of the student. As principals, as we change our lens, we look at actions and or behaviors. In this case with Bobby, the focus is rules. Yes, Bobby broke a rule. He was cheating, and now a decision has to be made. As principal, we ask, what are his consequences? What is fair punishment? What is justice? The rules have already been laid out in the student handbook, which Bobby and his mom both acknowledged that they understood. So the principal should do what he thinks is right in punishing Bobby. He's going to act in using equity in the event that another student cheats. So this can't be a case by case. Whatever decision the principal makes, he will have to follow that when other students come along and break the same rule. So if Bobby cheated and another student cheats, then the principal should go and stand by the rule that Bobby fails. Under the paradigm of care, the principal cares for Bobby. That's not an issue as a human being, as a student, but he cannot put compassion over principles. It was a shared decision-making process. The teacher talked to the principal, shared with the principal that he should follow what the rule says. The principal could not be influenced by outside factors of family members or what other people were saying. That if the principal did not follow the rule, or if the principal did follow the rule, then there could be repercussions to their athletic program. The principal couldn't listen to that. So it was shared decision making, and the teacher shared her viewpoint, and the principal agreed. So there are many different ethical paradigms that principals need to consider, and it's all about fairness, equity, justice. Sure, we have concern for the student, but it has to be a decision that's shared, and I feel like that's been shared in the handbook.
Okay, there we go.
Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Y'all did a great job. I just want to share with you a few of my thoughts, and these are just my personal thoughts of some things that that I want you to take with you, because I think this case is a great example of what will be on your desk every single day. It is not always likely that you're going to have one of the big, huge court cases, but you have these situations all the time. Here are a couple of my guiding principles. First of all, I showed you this before. This was my nameplate that said Dr. Zayon's on one side, and on the other side it simply says, is it in the best interest of the students? And that is what guided every decision that I made. And one of the things that is in the best interest of students is for you to be consistent. So I think consistency, and you all seem to mention that, I think that was very important. The part that, the first part that sickens me about this is the assignment itself. There isn't anything that was any harder in my job, there wasn't anything harder than having to support a teacher for an assignment that I didn't feel was accurate, equitable, engaging, motivating. Homework assignments that were given that students who didn't have the right resources, the right support, the right circumstances, it was 50 times harder for them to do than other students who had those resources and support. So I think the first thing that as a principal, you are the instructional leader. And I think the first thing is to know that your staff knows what your expectations are about assignments, and that it's not just okay to have the same assignment passed down year after year after year. If that is the best way to teach that objective, that's one thing. But if you're just giving an assignment just because that's your favorite assignment, I have a problem with that. So that would be my first question is, what do we know about the assignment? Many of you pointed out the grade percentage of this. I just went through a situation like this with one of my grandkids. And I'm going to tell you, sitting on this end, it's pretty hard when you look at a child that can make a mistake that can have a huge impact on their overall grade. And it's kind of like a zero. You know, a student in 4th grade that's given a 0 on an assignment, they don't really understand enough about math to really know what that 0, the impact that it's going to have. And look what happens. I mean, can they really make that up? So that's my first thing is, as a principal, you are the instructional leader. And this is certainly within your realm of responsibility to know what types of assignments are out there. And the other part of it is, was this assignment just given and then turned in? Because it seems to me that most of us would have check-in points along the way. So you would be saying, this is my plan for this assignment. I'm the student. I'll interview this person at this place. I'll do this. I'll do that. This is my timeline. I mean, that's what the purpose of assignments are, is to teach students to make decisions, to time manage, and to break things into chunks, to organize material. If we're not teaching them that, and we're just handing out blanket assignments, then we're really just doing busy work for them and for us. So that's my first big thing is, let's be preventive as much as we can. And let's lay out for our staff what type of expectations we have for the assignment. You are exactly right. The principal has the ultimate decision in the academic and instructional needs of that school. And so, yes, you are a teacher, but you work for me. And the bottom line is, I am the one responsible at the end of the day. And my job is to make sure that you have my support to deliver engaging instruction and assignments that are creative and purposeful, and that we set students up for success. That's really the big deal. Most of you mentioned the fact that, what's the purpose? He got an assignment. There was evidently no follow-up. He turned it in. He cheated. He's punished. And it's over. So what happened to what he was supposed to get from that assignment? You know, that wasn't addressed. That didn't seem to be a concern over the teacher. The thing the teacher was worried about is, I want to win. I want to be in charge, and I want to win. I want to get you because you did something to me, you know. So I think that's my big thing with this is just that I want you to take away from it. And that wasn't part of what I wanted you to present about, but it is a note that I wanted you to take away with you is, the day has come when it is your responsibility to be the instructional leader of your school. So first of all, know what you believe in as far as solid instruction. And don't just depend on an instructional coach or a grade level person to make those decisions. You need to have some guidelines for those. So that's number one. Second thing is, I have a big issue with consequences that continue to burn. We make mistakes, they happen, we rectify it, we suffer the consequences, and we move on. And for some kind of consequence that's going to follow this kid through the summer into the next school year, I just think that's horrific. I think there has to be a better way for that to happen, because we're not out here to get kids. We don't want him starting his next school year with a bad attitude towards it. We just set this kid up for failure if that's what we're doing. Don't get me wrong. I definitely believe he needs consequences, but somehow those consequences need to relate to his actions. And I can't see that anything that's happening in the summer is going to relate to his cheating on an assignment. So, you know, make sure when there are consequences that there is a connection to the action. Make sure that the punishment not just fits the crime, but feeds the crime. You know, make sure that I learned something by what I did to pay for that mistake. And in the end, all is forgiven. You know, I think sometimes kids make mistakes and they're kids. They're big kids, but they're kids, and they make mistakes. And our job as an educator is to teach them why they shouldn't have made that decision and for them to learn for it. But if the consequences are so damaging that it continues to beat them down, then we need to look at that. And then finally, I wanted to make the point that, to me, It wasn't about satisfying the guy with the money. It wasn't about satisfying the ball team. However, it is very much about how your community feels about you and your school. And if your community, who happens to value baseball evidently, if your community sees you punishing a child by withdrawing them from that, one of their key members, because of some assignment which they did not value, then you just lost a big chunk of your reputation in that community. And so that is the lens that they are looking at your other decisions. So they've already summed you up. You're unfair, your consequences are overly harsh, and they have nothing to do with each other. An assignment has nothing to do with baseball. Right or wrong, you are surviving within a community. You are part of that culture. And that is what the skip is all about, that culture piece. So think about this example when you're talking about the skip. It is your job to sell yourself out in that community. Your decisions and what you do every day is how that's developed. So make it positive. Do I think you should let him off scot-free? Heavens no. There definitely need to be consequences. But I see no relation between that assignment, cheating, and summer baseball. So that needs to be fixed, in my opinion. And then the final thing is, you talked about the policy being clear. Amen to that. The time you spend on your policies, and if you were in this session where I talked about this, if you can take your school policy, school handbook, school board policy, and align them, the better off you'll be. But also, look at this when you do the skip. If you can get a parent group to work with you on looking at these policies and helping you see, a lot of times they can pick out, oh, that's going to be a problem because what if this happens? Or what does that mean? So we have education talk and we read it and it makes sense to us. But if we can get some outsiders in to look at our policy manuals that we're writing, and some students and former students, then maybe things like this could be better defined before they're a problem, because your policies do need to be clear. And final thing is that one of the things that helped me so much as a principal is early on, especially before, I came in a stranger to the community, a stranger to the staff, and pretty much said, the first opening staff meeting, look to the right and look to your left, because a lot of these people won't choose to be here next year, because we are about to radically change the culture of this school. And I meant it in a very positive way. And I positively meant that some of those people may not choose to be back. Their choice or mine, because it was a very negative situation and we were going to turn it around. And that, keeping that in mind, I selected the most antagonistic people on the staff, those who didn't trust me, but who trusted each other, and had about one from each grade level, and created what I called a liaison team, and convinced the staff that these people are people they could go to voice any complaint, and I would listen to it, and they would not throw them under the bus. I wouldn't ask who said that, who didn't agree with that, but at least I would know what was going on behind my back. And so those are the people that helped me make decisions like this one that we're talking about tonight. Not in real life, but we had case studies just like we're doing tonight in our liaison team meeting. And I would present a case and say, okay, here's what happened. What if this happened? and we would go over a case study just like this. There's some great books out there. I just bought another one. They're pricey, but I just bought another one on case studies for educational leaders. And it's just like this, things you can present to your staff and have the staff share with you, and you in turn share with them, because you know the law and the policies, and you can share back and forth. That's how good communication starts. And that's how your staff comes to know that, you know what, you do care about what's the best interest of the students, but you also care and value your staff. So y'all did a great job with this. Again, I know these are hard, but you're doing a great job with them. And I truly believe that you're showing that you're demonstrating. I think this is a great way, assignment that pulls it all together and helps you take what you're learning in the text and putting it all together. Anybody have any closing remarks, questions, comments, concerns, celebrations? Well, let's look at something right before we go. Because I think I have a celebration. All right, here's my celebration. We are on Zoom session 8, and we only have 13. So that's really good news.
Yay!
Yay! That's good. The other thing is, I will be with you next week, which is exciting for me. I don't know about you, but I'm happy about it. I'll have both classes next week, and I'll send you some notes out. I'm going to change the agenda a little bit just because I think Chapter 7 and the role about special ed in the principal's role, I think that is such a key piece to your success legally and culturally and in so many other ways. And I do believe that it's your job to lead your staff to be advocates for special ed. And I think it's important that you lead your staff into recognizing that your special ed staff is part of the staff and that you are all working together. So, so I wanted some time to preach a little bit about that and to share with you some things that I have learned by asking the question, what do special ed teachers wish principals knew and did? And did differently. So I'd like to talk to you about that. So I'll send that agenda out, but that will be a little bit of next week. I also want you to know that the OMA scores are awesome. These are the highest OMA scores I've ever had overall. They look fantastic. Y'all have done a wonderful job. I don't know how much time you're spending with Dr. Stedman, or if you've been able to pull it off by just what we've gone over in class, but you're doing a great job. And I'm really enjoying working with you. I'm enjoying your work. But I am here for you, so if you have any questions throughout the week, don't hesitate to call or throw up your hands or whatever. A few of you are behind, so try to spend the next few days getting caught up. If I can help you with that, I'm here for you. Immediately text. If you need an immediate answer, text me. If you need right now, call me. And if it can wait a couple of hours, send me an email. And if I don't respond in 24 hours, I lost it, so send it to me again. Okay? Have a great day tomorrow. Thanks again for tonight. You did a wonderful job.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
Have a good night.
Good night.